Second. So,
Alive.
all right. So yeah, welcome to this session where we have Segun Oworu, who's going to be talking about the DEI research report. And yeah, I'll give it over to Segun to take it away. Over to you.
Thank you so much. I'm really glad to be at this WikiIndaba. My name is Segun Oworu. I work for the Wikimedia Foundation as a research and data analyst in the communications department. I joined in 2019, just at the last WikiIndaba in Abuja, and I couldn't attend, and I've been looking forward to being at the next one. So glad to be here. So I'm here to talk about the DEI research report. So just a few context before I dive in. This work started basically, like back in 2021 when we were interested in looking at how differences in perception about Wikipedia, but also other Wikimedia projects, but also in relation to the movement. And we started in the US because again, that's where mainly, diversity, inclusion story, needs, are very, very strong. But beyond the US, we're interested in seeing how this point plays out in other markets, especially in Africa also. So we ran research in South Africa and Nigeria. So this presentation will cover key highlights from the findings from that research, but also, share with you how we believe this will be very, very instrumental for the usage, both for us in the movement, but also, practically for you in your respective groups, how best to adopt the findings from this research. So I will run through the research, the presentation in about 30 minutes. Then we'll take enough questions to give room for interaction and feedback, and then we take it from there. So, like I was saying, why is this work very important to us? We believe that, starting back when the case of the arrest in the U.S. Owing to the George Floyd death, but all that started a global need to look at how organization, but also movement and everything is a bit more diverse and inclusive. So before now, we didn't have enough data to be able to understand and communicate about differences in how people know about the Wikipedia or Wikimedia, the project, how they engage with it, especially how that differs across different genders, different ethnic groups, different races, different communities across the world. So this started that conversation. But when we looked at this work, we believe that it will give us a good way to see how the movement is viewed, and we can be able to take necessary action to improve or strengthen our work in relation to our common equity goals. But secondly, and very, very important, is that it will help us understand how people who use us, the audiences that we try to reach, how these people are, how they think, how they perceive us, but also how it differs even within each market or each country. And that's one of the things you will see from this data. And thirdly, it's also to help us make informed decisions about what we do, the programming or priorities that we set, how we design our strategies, how we engage with our users, how we develop the product, what content do we put out, how do we ensure we represent different groups across the world. And then also communication strategies, because again, what works for someone in what works for example, an Hausa man in Nigeria may not basically work for a Yoruba man, not because they are not human beings, but they have different personalities and different experiences, and it's important to understand how they reason and how they behave and how they interact with us, especially, like I said, especially in areas that we are underrepresented. But very, very importantly is to help us measure progress, because without us knowing what is the situation, we can't know whether we are making progress, because if we just run activities or run operations, it's important to see and measure progress, hold ourselves accountable, and set benchmarks that we can use to measure success. So that's why we feel this is very important. Then we also, because we try to say, okay, if this is important, how will we use this data? So Number one is that it will help us establish an understanding of the barriers to engagement and participation among underrepresented people on Wikipedia and other projects. Because if we understand how they perceive things, what are the barriers, we can be able to use those things positively for ourselves and in our different groups. And we will also use the data to address problems that may result in limited engagement and participation from the different groups that we study, and equip ourselves, with the intelligence to be able to take the right message, the right calls that really resonate with different groups. Because like I said, if a group is interested in language and you're speaking something about different content, then that's not customizable for them. Yeah, and that goes to the last point, which is to have people from these groups engage with, and we can draw lessons that we can apply to our work. So that's how we are using and we want to use this work, and I also encourage you this work, in that light. So, like I said, this work started in the US. So we started evaluating the US and Africa and Nigeria. We also have other countries outside of Africa that we have done or we are also planning to do. So, but this is WikiIndaba, we wanted to from the two markets that we selected in Africa, which are South Africa and Nigeria. And as you know, yes, they are Africa countries, but there are different things about these different markets, and we feel it's important to see how they differ within the countries. So for the research, in terms of methodology, the research adopted an online survey. So we reached internet users, basically that use the internet to get information or do anything. So the target audience were internet users. Then in terms of the sample frame, we used a total of 1,500 respondents in each market. But it's very important to mention that of the 1,500 in South Africa, we captured about 1,000 colored people. And colored in this context refer to members of a multi-ethnic groups, which according to Wikipedia is officially regarded as one of the 4 race groups in the country, while the other 500 are other groups within the country. So in South Africa, and I will still touch on that, the context was basically in terms of race, while in Nigeria it's a little different. It's in terms of ethnic groups. And in terms of the ethnic groups in Nigeria we focused on, we looked at the 3 major ones, but also grouped the other ethnic groups into one as other ethnicities. So the Yoruba, the Igbo, and the Hausa, and the other ethnic groups. And the research in South Africa ran in last year in October, while for Nigeria ran earlier this year in May. So before I dive into the data, because again, it's a bit more numbers driven, I wanted to share with you some of the key highlights that we got from the work. And I will still set some context for you to understand what it means in this thing, but it's important. Let me just share some of these highlights. So for example, in South Africa, we identified that Black people feel well represented in the general South African media, but not as much as on Wikipedia. This is a point that resonated that we got among this group of people. Then we also identified that there's gap in terms of engagement with people in South Africa, especially the colored community. And then also the issue around, there was also gap in terms of how people perceive Wikipedia as being representative of the South African languages. So we said that there's an opportunity to represent South African languages even better. And lastly, we also identified the gap in engagement with the people with physical and mental health issues. And that means that maybe this is a place that we ought to focus more to drive better engagement. On the flip side, in Nigeria, there was an overall feeling that Wikipedia is not a good perfect representative of the local culture in Nigeria. Because again, people feel like it's more white than them. That's one of the feelings that we got from the research. Secondly, is Igbo and smaller ethnic groups feel the least represented, but still that did not really affect their intent to use Wikipedia regularly. The Hausa community seems to be the community that had the most negative perceptions of Wikipedia, and also they tend to use it less. While the LGBT community also had negative perceptions and lower use of Wikipedia. Then lastly, we saw that to drive better engagement, it's important for people in Nigeria that the content be more relevant and more visually driven. So these were like high level insights that we got from the work. So diving into the data, and I'll start with South Africa. But before looking at the numbers, it's important to understand the context in which we did the research. So number one is that in the data that we'll be sharing here, there are cultural and country nuances that are peculiar to the South African market, and that is important to be taken into context or into account when understanding the data that we share here. So what that means is that even though you have an experience of how something is somewhere else, the issues and and things in South Africa tend to also affect some of the findings here, and it's important to capture that clearly here. And secondly, is about the colored group of people, which I said refers to the multi-ethnic groups in South Africa. Then on the third thing is that generally in South Africa, awareness is low at the total market level. And for that, it's important that we factor that in when reading or understanding this data. So this data basically represent those people who are online and use the internet. Then about the Black community, we identified two things. Number one is that the Black community that we selected for this research, because it was online, they are younger and a bit more tech savvy. So that is also to be taken into context. But also the ones that responded to this research are more of a higher socioeconomic background of online users and may not generally reflect the total Black community in South Africa. So just wanted to set that clear. We're going to the numbers now. So this first slide looks at representation on the media versus on Wikipedia. So the chart on the left, which is spider chart, shows, so the blue line is percentage of people who feel represented on the general South African media. The red is those on Wikipedia, while the yellow is on those by the foundation. So, but the key highlights that we were able to pick out is that the Black and those with physical or mental health conditions feel well represented on the general South African media, but the colored and the Black community feel moderately to less represented on Wikipedia. And in terms of the areas that which they tend to feel underrepresented on Wikipedia, we see that race is very important for the colored community. Please, just 1 minute, let me shut the windows. It's very sorry. So in terms of the areas that the different communities feel underrepresented on Wikipedia, we saw that race is one point that the colored community feel that they are less represented, while the Black community pointed towards the local language as one of the major points that were not well represented on Wikipedia. So moving forward, they also looked at awareness of Wikipedia and how it differs, awareness and usage or intent to use, and how it differs across the different communities or groups that we surveyed. In terms of awareness, if you look at the top, we see that the colored male and the Asian female tops awareness. People with health conditions, but also the Asian male and the LGBTQ community. So awareness is low among those groups. But in terms of usage, the Asian women are most likely to use Wikipedia, while the white and colored women are less likely to use Wikipedia. To also give context to how people use Wikipedia, we looked at, we asked, topics that people are more interested in that, or that they use Wikipedia mostly for. And as you see, in the Black Black community business tends to be a major point that are interested for the Black communities, while history mainly cuts across others, with the exception of the Asian female who are more interested in things around health and well-being and beauty. So, but business for the Black communities, others are interested in history. Then going next to how people perceive the Wikipedia values and what they associate with Wikipedia. So on the left is the perception about topic areas that Wikipedia values. So what this was trying to evaluate is the perception of people and what topic areas or notions that they feel that Wikipedia values based on their experience with Wikipedia. So even though it's very interesting to see that people see Wikipedia as being a site for everyone, a place with freedom of speech and human rights, we see that a lot of people in South Africa does not see Wikipedia as valuing issues or topics that are directly relevant for South Africa, like the ABM movement, youth unemployment, and the Black economic empowerment issues. Then in terms of things associated with Wikipedia, so we see that colored women, the LGBTQ community, and those with health conditions tend to see Wikipedia as having less integrity or empathy, while colored women and those with health conditions also see Wikipedia as least inclusive. Then lastly, we also looked at editing and or contributing to Wikipedia, where we looked at, we asked those who said they have edited or contributed to any Wikipedia article in recent times versus those who are interested in contributing to Wikipedia in the future. As you see here, the list places where it seems that we have number of contributors among the white females, but those that are highest are among the people that have health conditions, the Black community, and the Asian male. So men and those with health conditions are most likely to claim that they have edited, while members of the white community have the least interest in editing. But in terms of those who are very strongly interested in the future, we see the Asian females, the Black males, and those with health conditions interested in editing Wikipedia in the future. Then in terms of what are the things that are important for them to contribute or join the movement or add value to Wikipedia, we see that colored community are more interested in editing Wikipedia in order to increase inclusivity and representation. So that's basically for South Africa at the top level, and I will jump to South Africa just to save some time. Nigeria. So in terms of Nigeria, like I said before, this BEI perspective was approached from an ethnicity, but also religious standpoint, because we believe that that is what reflects the on-the-ground situation in Nigeria. And the ethnic groups that we looked at are the 3 plus the others as grouped as 1, which are the Yoruba, Igbo, and Hausa, and the smaller ethnic groups, which include, but not limited to this list, the Ijaw, the Igala, the Nupe, the Fulani, the Shakiri, the Tiv, Urobo, and others. And then in terms of differentiation, we grouped yes into Muslim and Christians, but we further divided the Christians into 2 groups, the Catholics, which reflects the other ones that are non-Orthodox. And again, one point to stress is that there are areas where we didn't find notions to be very different across the different groups, so as a whole. And lastly, the LGBT community respondents that we got were very, very limited. So it's important to text when digesting these numbers that we don't feel that number is big enough to be able to be a representation of the thoughts of the LGBT community, but it's important to just state that. So starting with representation on the general Nigeria media, we see that the Igbos and the smaller ethnic communities feel that their ethnicity and language entered in the region that is least represented. Women and the LGBT community feel less represented by their gender and sexual orientation, respectively, in the Nigerian media. Then looking at representation on Wikipedia now, we see, like, so in this case, there were not significant differences in what the people thought across the different groups. So that's why we looked at it as a whole. So generally, we see that Nigerians feel that their ethnicity and communities are underrepresented on Wikipedia. And that's what you see here. And in terms of topic areas, we see that Igbos and smaller ethnic groups feel that less represented on Wikipedia in terms of their ethnicity and language, while the LGBT community feel less represented for their sexuality. Then we also touched representation on Wikipedia in terms of number of articles, where we asked whether whether the Wikipedia has few or many or two or about right number of articles relating to different topics. We see that strongly that too few about there were too few articles about ethnicities, especially among the Igbos and the Hausas, and they feel like there are too many stories or articles about the white people's culture, history, and people. Then when we looked at the awareness and usage, we see that there's an overall higher brand awareness for Wikipedia across about an average of about 92%. And that is primarily driven by the Yoruba and the Igbo speaking community, especially the Pentecostal Christians that are among them. Then in terms of usage, Wikipedia seems to drive huge number of usage as against other sources at about 64%, so which is very high. And so usage is highest among small ethnic groups and lowest among Muslims. And most users of Wikipedia primarily read it in English language. Then in terms of topics that are mostly used by Nigerians on Wikipedia, again, we see that technology, business, and science are the key topics that they read, but they want to see more about health and well-being, but also tech and business inclusive in the future on Wikipedia. Then in terms of brand associations with Wikipedia, we saw that the Hausas generally across the board, there was a positive association with Wikipedia, but the least positive association is primarily seen among the Hausa community, especially among the Hausa men, and they tend to feel least likely to find Wikipedia credible or relevant. And in terms of relevance, that is also driven more by the Hausa women. So lastly, wanted to touch on the editing numbers. So in terms of editing, there's a general interest to contribute to content on Wikipedia by all the communities in Nigeria. But in terms of the drivers, we see that the desire to help the society and share knowledge are some of the top reasons for interest in editing Wikipedia. So that brings us to the end of my presentation. However, there's more. We have put all this data on the website where you could go there to interact with the data and visualize how this looks, or if you want to have better understanding of what this work is, we have that site already live, and I'll share it in the chat. So that is live, and you can go there, look at the data, cut it by how you want it, or see visualizations to see and understand better. So, but this is very interesting for us because we see that this data is very useful for us to look for. And when I talk about us, I'm not saying the foundation, I'm talking about the movement, because we are all part of this big thing. And, you know, the world has been data driven, and we see that it's important to know what is in terms of data and use that data to inform our decisions. So I will stop here. I don't know if I've gone too far. I think I tried to save enough time. I'll pass it back if there are questions, and we could use the remaining time to converse and discuss on the questions.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for the presentation. That was very insightful. I think we have some questions actually from the room, and And yeah, we still have some time, so I will. Yeah, sure, we can take some questions. So yeah, is there anyone with a question? And please, if you're asking a question, also introduce yourself so that Hussein can be able to know who is asking. Thank you. First
All right.
question.
Thank you very much. I'm audible enough, right?
Yes,
No.
yes.
Okay, so thank you. Okay, my name is Akomi, and I come Yemi, and I'm the project director from Wikimedia UG Nigeria. Thank you so much for the wonderful presentation. As a person, I'm one person that actually likes data. I want to see, okay, this data, how do we then, work around it and create pragmatic solution with it. So I'm actually very, very interested with what you've done with this research, looking at diversity, equity, and also inclusion. And so kudos. So, but I just have some few clarity. I just want to, probably just, get some more findings about. Of course, I'm much more interested about the part that speaks to Nigeria. That's really my main interest. And one of the very thing about it is I could not really find a specific. Was there a specific? That's the first question. Were there specific age category when the old research was done? Was there like a specific age category that was targeted, and what were the main respondent when it comes to the age category? And also, I also like the fact that you were able to include member of the LGBTQ plus community. As someone that in the last, due to the Wiki Human Rights Project in the last 1 year, personally been involved with the member of the LGBT community when it comes to training and stuff in Nigeria. So I'm wondering how were data gotten? Is it just in partnership with an organization, because LGBTQ plus community in Nigeria are not visible when it comes to individual, they are not visible. So I'm just wondering how was that really done? Did you get to partner with an organization, LGBT organization, to say, okay, please share this with your members, share with people you know that are part of the LGBTQ community? That's that. And also the third thing, which is coming back to the ethnicity. You talked about the drive, the Igbo, the Hausa, and also the other languages. I also just want to also get from the Yoruba perspective, what were the resounding thing about it? Because I see that there was really no mention about that in terms of it was just, we had, okay, at least these are the interest group from the Igbo, the interest group from the Hausa, and there was really nothing about, the Yoruba. So those are just like the three questions. I don't know if I'm actually clear enough, and I'm not just babbling, but those are just the three questions.
Yeah, thank you. I didn't get the last one, but the first thing, and I can answer it together, is we used an online survey tool to run the survey. So basically, as a normal research tool, the age group starts from 18 plus. So that's the first thing, 18 plus, but we didn't restrict the age. So we covered about 18 to 24, 25 to 35, up to the 65 plus. So in terms of age, we covered everything. So if you want slices about what different age said about the different questions, then we can also look deeper and share that data. So, but we covered everything. For the LGBT community, yes, as you know, it's not legal in Nigeria, so I think that is also a factor. So, and our tool was able to have some screeners where people were open to saying, yes, I am this, and we screened that number of people for that research. So, and that's why I mentioned in the context that we didn't get enough people that were open to say this, and in that way, we couldn't have enough sample frame for that. And that's why we said that disclaimer that the number is small. We feel that that may change if we have more respondents in that category. So, but we set screeners that was able for us to have people mention that they are this, not because we want to capture their data, but for us to be able to target them, differently for the purpose of this research. The third question, I didn't get more. I didn't hear very well. I don't know
Okay, sorry. The last question was just more of, I see that from the presentation, you made mention of, the resounding thing about the other languages, the
Yeah.
Hausa, I was just wondering probably if there's anything from the research that also talks about the Yoruba
So
in
yeah,
terms of.
one of the findings from the Yoruba is generally that the Yorubas tend to be more educated, but in terms of usage, in terms of awareness, they are the strongest among the others. So that is one thing that we identified. Then they also feel more engaged and more have a positive perception about the Wikipedia brand. So basically, they tend to be at the forefront of usage, engagement, awareness, and most of the numbers. So I didn't call it out because they tend to be more positive and more about the people who use it even more.
Okay, just last one in just few seconds. Sorry, just few seconds. I'm really, really, I don't know, maybe it's concern or just out of curiosity that when you look at the data for people that actually use Wikipedia, you have technology, business, and science, topping the list at least from the data, because normally I would have bet everything that when you do that kind of data and then you ask people Nigerians, you have more of entertainment, popping the list, and also more of politics because an average Nigerian that's what. So I'm just wondering how, like, in the ranking, although I didn't get this, I didn't see the slide all through the ranking. So I just thought the topmost was technical business science. Were there any indicator for the entertainment and also the political side? And also, lastly, with this research, is there going to be a further, like, maybe like an implementation or just something to say, okay, like an action to say, okay, this is this data, this is this information, and this is something maybe the foundation as a whole needs to do to work on maybe picking it up or just some of the pragmatic solutions from the data you've done or the research.
Yeah, good questions. So for you are rightly correct. And yes, if you look at people generally using internet, yes. However, for the purpose of the research, we didn't just put Wikipedia in this, but when we try to dive deeper, for example, about Wikipedia, it is about people who know Wikipedia. So we tend to filter out it. Looked at the larger group, maybe there will be more entertainment here. So I think that's a good point to call out. So, but yes, in our larger markets, that market research that we did, yes, entertainment, the need for videos, using content on the internet for fact checking, or tends to be one of the major points where people use content on online. But Wikipedia tends towards more of personal development or wanting to engage or use something to have arguments, all that stuff. So that's it. Then on the second point of action points, so yes, number one is that there are clear cut, like first for our department, there are communication plans in this line. And one of the things is presenting this, but also having campaigns that this data use this as in the campaign uses some of this data to target or reach out to people in a more customizable way. So that's from the foundation part. But like I said, we are all together, so we're expecting that your groups are interested in using this data. And that's why we have it out there on the site where you could go there to say, hey, this is what people in this group say. Maybe we should try and target our strategy to engage more or cover that gap. So it's it's an all-inclusive plan that we feel like it's important to share this with you so that this will guide further engagement, further plans, further campaigns in the future.
Okay. Yeah, is another question from Sherlock?
Can you move?
Okay.
Mr. Oworu, thank you very much for the report. Unfortunately, I wasn't around to see through all the presentation, but before I left the room, there's something I saw that is a bit of a concern. However, it might not be by the time you explain it to me. For the size of the respondents, we have 1,000 each, 500 South Africa and Nigeria. For a layman, I would like to see a scenario where the respondent size for Nigeria should be bigger than that of South Africa. If in any way, any part of this report tries to compare results, because South Africa roughly give and take 70 million compared to 250 million population. So I'm just trying, I might not be right, but is there anywhere in the report where you compare like for likes in this report? And secondly, the second question, I know when it comes to Africa, horror knowledge is something that is quite essential, quite key, and it's a problem right now because when you talk about Wikipedia, I want to see how oral knowledge can be brought into Wikipedia. Is there anywhere in this report where oral knowledge, anything about oral knowledge is discussed? Those are the two questions that I have. Thank you.
So yeah, I was struggling to hear very well, but I think on the second question, so the focus of this work is primarily to see how people differ in how they perceive Wikipedia and how they use it. So yes, there are other research that we have done that are a bit more encompassing and in a larger scope. So, but we try to see how the different groups differ in terms of how they use Wikipedia, what they use it for, and how interested they are in the movement. Sorry, it's raining here and I can hardly hear myself, so I just want to shut the windows.
Do you want me to repeat the first question?
No, it's just raining.
Yeah,
so he's going to
so-
shut the windows.
Okay.
Do you want to repeat the first question?
I'm asking.
I didn't hear the first question.
Okay, the first question, I said, when I look at the size of the respondents to this study, we have 1,500 each for South Africa and Nigeria. And because I wasn't around to follow through the presentation, then that led to the question: is there any where in this presentation where you compare like for likes in this presentation? Why did I say so? I can imagine the number of, the population in Nigeria compared to that of South Africa. We have about 250 million and to say 70 million in South Africa. If we are to use 1,000, the same number for the two, that's likelihood that we might not be able to get the right result when you compare, when you don't put into consideration the size of the two population, of the two countries into consideration. And also, when you are looking at the respondents, do you target only, do you put into consideration Wikimedians, or you only look for people that are not Wikimedians? Hello, Mr. Oworu.
Yes, I hear you and I get your point now. So I agree, yes, the markets are different in terms of population sizes. And I think your point is that there ought to be a reflection of that group difference in the sample frame. So
Yes.
we didn't have a like-for-like comparison because the contexts were different in terms of ethnicity versus race. So we couldn't do that direct comparison. But yes, I think that's right. Probably, but from statistical point of view, based on the number of people that we try to reach, the number of 1,005 was statistically significant for us to call and use the findings as a baseline. But but for areas that we didn't feel comfortable using the number, and that's why I pointed out the point on LGBT community and some other groups that we feel like they are very small for us to make a summary or conclusion on. So, but in terms of like to like, we didn't do that because the context were a little bit different. For example, in the US also, when we did that, it was more about race. In Japan, that we did just recently, there were no significant difference in terms of their race or their views there. And that also did not help us to do a like-for-like comparison. So, but I get your point in terms of sample frame being not, maybe not a direct reflection when you compare to South Africa.
All right. Yeah, thank you. So, yeah, is there anyone else who has a question? Another question? Okay, so yeah, it looks like there isn't any other question from the room, but it's good also that there is a link where if someone wants to read more and also interact with the data that you have shared. So yeah, thank you so much, Oxen, for your presentation, and maybe yeah, if you'd like to do any closing remarks, and then we end the session. Thank you.
So yeah, one of the things that we are looking forward to is closely working with you. If you need that, there are other topic areas that we should cover, because again, this work will still roll over. We want to see in another time how the numbers have changed. So if you have a feedback in terms of context that you want us to capture in either of these markets, please feel free to reach out to us and let us know, okay, hey, can you look at this group of communities in your extra work, or I have an idea of how best you can improve this in terms of things on the ground based on your experience. We are very open to that. Then, like I said, we share the link, so please feel free to go there. Let's use the data and let's be a bit more data driven, even as we try to do our work. So thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm really, really glad to be able to do this.
Thank you.
Thank you.